There's a rite of passage around like 12, 13 years old where you do your hero's journey and you go into this really darker place and come out on the other side, and then you're beginning something new. We don't really have that.
No, there's no initiation?
No initiation, yeah. People don't like the word discipline, but I always sort of reframe that because discipline is the disciple, and the disciple means you're following something that you love.
Through practice, it's like these inner winds can
Cleaning,
flow deeper, and you have greater pranic integration and flow that can help you connect to spirit.
But there's something about that psychedelic experience that frees you from like the fear of death and shows you your subtle realities are more real than these physical realities.
We need a mirror, you know, we need a mirror of somebody else that either shows some truth to us or shows us that it's not true.
Nice to see you again. 12 years later, 13 years later.
A little older, a little wiser maybe.
Yeah, some life has happened for both of us.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wait,
so
how did you meet 12 years ago? I don't know the story.
we were both at a film festival in New Mexico, I guess
In
it was.
Albuquerque?
Yeah. In Albuquerque. I was screening One Track Heart, the story of Krishna Das, and you were screening Healing the Mind, it was called, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a documentary on synthesizing Western psychiatry with Ayurveda.
Wow.
And Dr. Ladd was in it, and like 5 doctors, 2 Western and 3 Ayurvedic doctors. It was
And
fun.
at that festival, we were like the 2 spiritual films,
Yeah.
which is always an interesting sort of ghetto to be in at the film festivals that
Yeah.
are not overtly spiritual film festivals.
At all, yeah. So I did, you may not remember, but I did come up to you like in the lobby and I'm like, oh, I loved your film, and yeah.
I remember.
That was it.
Yeah.
That's how we met, and haven't seen you since. So
Nice to see you again.
nice to see you too.
Yeah, so I feel like there's so many places we could start our conversation. Maybe just kind of share a little bit about your background and how you came. So you made that film, and let's start with the film actually, maybe because that's kind of an interesting
Okay, so
intersection for us.
I was an Ayurvedic practitioner at the time, and I wanted to get into like rehab centers and psych hospitals and create a program so that they could leave with some kind of structured, I wasn't going to call it an Ayurvedic program, but it was kind of like that, lifestyle. And because most of the clients that I had in my Ayurvedic practice were coming to me with more afflictions of their mind. And so I made the film. My husband did some filmmaking in his past, so he said, I'll help you do it. And then I had that film, and I was bringing it to these really good hospitals in the area. I was in Connecticut and New York at the time. And they would say to me, we have a yoga program. I'm like, this isn't yoga. So I got shut down a lot, and I went to, I started thinking about maybe I need to get licensed as a therapist. So I went to speak with the dean of a school, and she agreed with me. She said, you can get into these places and do what you want once you have your license, because they're always going to look at you as like a yoga teacher or something that they're not all that interested in. So I went back to school, got my master's, and I've been a therapist ever since, and mostly integrated therapy because I always have incorporated Ayurveda, and I've always been part of the psychedelic field from like 2014. And so, yeah, really integrative therapy is what I've been doing ever since.
When I was interviewing Dr. Ladd, when I first started making the doctor from India, one thing, it didn't end up in the film, but one thing he said that really stood out to me was, he said, yeah, in India, people have physical problems. They're malnourished, they've got, these crazy diseases that you don't see in a lot of places. He said, in America, it's mostly just in their mind.
Yeah, it's true.
Now we've caught up. We've poisoned people enough that there's a
The whole
lot of
world
physical
has the same-
problems.
the whole world has the same problem now.
Now the whole world
Globalization,
does,
the
yeah.
internet, so everyone kind of has the same mental issues.
Well, and when I called it Western psychiatry, I had a lot of people coming to me on SSRIs, which really messes
Yeah,
with your
absolutely.
gut. And I don't say it's not a good thing to ever be on them, because there are definitely people that it has helped a lot. So I'm not advocating that, but the serotonin really messes with your gut. And so helping to wean people off of it while giving them some, Ayurvedic practices and lifestyle changes and food changes was pretty much what I was doing. So yeah, they had gut issues, but also mind. Yeah.
I think this will be so helpful for our viewers to hear. So if someone has mind issues, anxiety, depression, frequent frustration, whatever the case, instability of mind, what Ayurvedic principles are you taking that will help them recenter or kind of heal that imbalance?
You mean as a therapist now?
Yeah, as a therapist, if you're how does Ayurveda get integrated?
Well, and I don't really say the words Vata, Pitta, Kapha.
Sure.
But if somebody is quite visibly Vata imbalanced, I don't go feel their pulse either, it's just I can see it.
Sure.
Then I'll give, suggest oil, a lot of oiling things. I do suggest food, not usually in the first couple sessions. It depends on the receptivity of the person. And breath work, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of breath work.
Yeah.
And then I always talk a lot about warm food, and if somebody is clearly a kapha type of depression, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
But I'm kind of sneaking it in there, not like covertly, it's just it becomes part of my nature, when I see somebody.
Sure. Yeah, I think that, breath, bowel movement, this sounds so simple.
That I don't ask.
No, but because you're right. I would say majority of my clients need some nourishing when it comes to their manas or their mind or their subtle body or their karma, it's so prevalent if people have a lot of heat issues, they have liver issues or skin issues or migraines. You solve one, but there's something else still persists. You solve that and something else persists. And generally, there is some emotional, they had some trauma, or they had to forgive somebody. So without processing that, all of it kind of gets done in tandem,
Yeah.
And then a lot of times when you release toxins from the liver, anger spontaneously comes up as well. So much of it's integrated that if you treat the liver, the gallbladder, the small intestine, the stomach, all these particular things, there's a peace. There's a peace that starts settling into that human being, that most of the serotonin is made in the GI tract,
Yeah.
and only a little bit is made in the brain. So that's just, I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, anger is an interesting one because a lot of people have suppressed anger so much that when you do a lot of therapy and you start working through things, the anger can come up like a volcano, where it just erupts and they're don't know what's going on with them. Why did that just happen to me? Or I was screaming at this guy across the street. And I always say it's going to come out not so pretty in the beginning because you've held it down for so long. And then as you start becoming friends again with that emotion, then it's much more in the moment, manageable. But yeah, as far as Ayurveda goes, that's a big piece of it too.
I think as a therapist, if somebody comes in and tells you they're depressed and you start asking them about their poop,
Yeah.
it might be a nice way to really
was
break
gonna
the
say.
ice with somebody.
So what is your bowel movement like? They'll be like, well, am I in the right office?
But you know what? Sometimes it's a relief for people. If they're constipated, if they're eating at odd times of the day, if they're not being in the rhythms of sunrise and sunset, if all of a sudden you start, you'll have a lot more mental peace if you have a sleep routine, or if you see the rising sun. A lot of the science now is talking about how the rays of the sun in the morning just totally fill you very differently.
Oh, yeah.
And physiologically, it's measured. Your cortisol levels go up at the right time. So when you start explaining, I think people just from a young age, or they just don't understand how to be in the rhythms of the day. And Ayurveda, for all practical purposes, is just be in the rhythms of the day, of the moon, of the seasons. I think it's really empowering for people. Like, really? I was like, well, I can heal myself by doing that. I was like, well, how well do you think when you're constipated? And they're like, I can't solve a problem at all when I'm constipated. All right, well then, when you have a clean bowel movement, it gives you clarity, clean colon, clean mind, right? So I think it is empowering for some people because they feel like they're more in control of not just being the victim of their emotions per se, but maybe there's things they can do in their lifestyle that can help bring some balance.
I think there's also still, for some people, a little bit of a shame of going to therapy, that there's something like that they should be in more control of their mind. And whereas physically, I feel like there's less shame.
Yeah.
That like somehow, for some reason, I'm having some physical imbalance. I know for my mom, for instance, when my father passed away, I really wanted her to go to therapy. And there was still for her this real shame around that there's nothing wrong with me in that way.
Yeah.
But when you address it on a physical level and your whole mental construct starts to change and you feel different, because most people in our culture are not eating well, they're not living in the rhythms of the day. There's so many things that destabilize us from our natural state of health and homeostasis that, of course, it's going to affect your mind.
Yeah.
And then what level are you beginning to try to solve the problem from?
Yeah, Jeremy and I both see a healer. I call her my spiritual therapist, because it's like the stuff that I just get off my chest, and I think it's just fantastic. So I'm such a advocate of, some change of state containers or talk with somebody, or, I think it's just very, very useful. I'm glad we have her in our lives.
For her, I feel like she's working at all levels.
Yeah.
She comes in there, you think, the first time you go in there, you think she's going to give you a massage or something. And then within 5 minutes, you're crying about something you've never talked to anybody about.
Yeah.
She's Chinese medicine. You think I'm probably getting some acupuncture or some cupping, but before you know it, it's like I've cried a couple of times with her. So like, she's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing human. I think the Chinese medicine thing's just a front to get you through the door.
Yeah, it's a Trojan horse, I feel like, which is kind of what you're talking about with you're sneaking the Ayurveda in. People are coming for one thing, but then there's a whole plethora of things.
I've actually been segueing a little bit more into group therapy. I mean, I still do individual one-on-one, but the group therapy has turned into like the most beautiful community, where people start to really get to know each other. And like this Monday, I'm not there. I wasn't there for the group, and they all met anyway. The whole group met at somebody's house and so the fact that like this community got created and they're all very, it takes a while to get to know people, but when you're in the group therapy scene, it's a whole different thing. It's like when you go on a retreat and you get together in a group and people say why they came, all of a sudden you're just like much closer to the people than like someone you met in your class or yoga class, whatever. So I think I feel like I've been moving a little bit more into the group. Well, the reason I brought that up is because in one of my last group therapy sessions, one of my clients who's really into Ayurveda, she started sharing it with everybody in the class. She goes, your Vata dosha is out of balance. I was like, wow, I taught her well. So anyway, yeah. So I've been liking that platform a little more than one-on-one lately.
Yeah, I was listening to this morning or yesterday, I was listening to this talk, and it was talking about like millennial, it was going through all the different, segments of ages. Generations, right, exactly. And it was saying that they're measuring how people were in each generation, and the modern generation is like their empathy levels are super down, their ability to relate super down. They're like and they're showing like these drastic measurable differences in youth, like younger people.
Yeah.
And they're saying that like in the 80s or something like that, they're saying that before like the internet was prevalent and all this other type of stuff, most communities, they said they would meet with people like in their street or in their neighborhood or in their community 4 to 5 times a week. Like, when people only have like a few channels to see TV on, they don't have the internet. And they're saying now people don't even meet in their community. Like it's like once every few weeks, you know, and before it'd be like 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
And how like our natural ability just to help another human being, like how it's all diminishing. Like humanity, like their competencies and empathy and compassion are just totally just falling off the face of this, you know, earth, you know? And I think that having these community support groups, I think is just super needed.
Yeah. I also think that a big piece of that lack of empathy or connection is kids and young adults are looking to outside, like the ring, the aura ring, or not that there's anything wrong with it, but to let them be told what their mood is, or let them be told, did I have a good day? Or if they can't think of directions, they just go on the GPS.
Right.
Or if I can't think of the name of something, I ask Siri, oh, what was that called? And so a lot of our cognitive reasoning is kind of dropping, and spatial reasoning, like how to get somewhere. And if I don't really know what my mood is, my intuition is, because an app is telling me, oh, you're down today. So
Yeah.
we're losing connection. Like if we're losing connection to ourselves, then we're losing connection to like everybody else.
Everybody else, to God, to nature.
Yeah. So that's gotta change. Yeah. Then we can like segue onto like, I think one of the things we were going to talk about is some of these retreats, you know, where you go and you kind of reconnect with who you really are. And I think a lot of younger people are starting to like be interested in that, which is so good because you can't have your phone. You should take your ring off if you're being tracked, and just get back to like who you are, you know, like remember who you are. We have gotten so far away from our intuition that people just kind of forgot who they are. Remember, you probably watched this now when you have a kid, the Lion King, where Mufasa says Simba doesn't want to do whatever he is supposed to do, and he comes to him in like a dream and he says, remember who you are. And it's like the most powerful scene because he had to be reminded. And that's sort of that rite of passage, you know, that that they have in these more tribal communities, where we're missing a lot of that in our culture, where there's a rite of passage around like 12, 13 years old, where you do your hero's journey and you go into this really darker place and come out on the other side, and then you're beginning something new. We don't really have that.
No, there's no initiation.
No
culture,
initiation,
pretty
yeah.
much.
Oh,
I'm
connection
sorry,
with
I'm a little
spirit.
distracted. I
There's
feel
a
like
lizard.
Yeah, there's a lizard.
Ah.
We've never seen a lizard in the room before.
I brought it
I
from
feel
Florida.
like there's an initiation. The spirit animals are
That's
here
so
with
funny.
us. You see it?
Yeah.
You see it?
No.
It's right there.
Oh. I swear
I saw
I
it
didn't bring it
all
to
the way
Florida.
Yeah.
That's funny. I thought you were looking at something. I
I
wasn't
was. I
looking
said,
at.
am I really seeing a lizard right now?
Well, I think he should stay there.
Yeah, I hope he feels comfortable. Yeah, so when you're talking about these kind of gatherings, you're talking about plant medicine, ayahuasca kind of
Yeah.
ceremonies. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people can really like connect more quickly because they're all coming to remember who they are, really. I mean, someone will say, I can't break my addiction, or somebody will say, I am in this crisis in my life. Everybody has like a individual reason why they're there, but underneath it all, that's why we're going, I think, just to kind of tap into that seen and unseen place of like who we are and why we came, and what was the purpose of us coming to live in this 5 sense human body.
Yeah, I feel like the people who are lucky enough to have some sense that there's more, that what they've been kind of presented with is what life is and what the options and parameters and potential of it is. And you sense that there's something more and you start looking around. It's a real gift. That I feel like when I was first finding my way in that journey, I wasn't hearing anybody talking about doing these kind of plant medicine ceremonies. I'd never heard the word ayahuasca. It kind of is in the last, I don't know, 10 years or ish. It's been
Not-
around, but
yeah, it's been around,
but that
but-
it's become a little bit more prevalent in the
Yeah.
culture. And it's fascinating seeing how it has found its way in really wonderful ways, and like our culture does what it
Really
does with
bad
things,
ways,
you know. How did you come to it? Well, you said it sounded like you were kind of at the first
yeah,
of this current wave.
I was working with people who were using mushrooms back in 2014 and having like Kundalini awakenings, sort of, and that's what they called it.
Oh, I believe it. I'm just chuckling. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, and it was really. I mean, you
Yeah.
can call it a spiritual awakening, whatever you want, but and I had certainly played around a lot with it in high school and late high school, college, but this was kind of new. I was very familiar with Stanislav Grof and his breath work, and yeah, so it's just been, it's 2025 now. It's like 11 years. I started kind of saying, oh, this is, I mean, really underneath, like people who don't, the group, one of the groups I run is an integration group. So everybody has either done some kind of psychedelic, or they're planning on it, or they're interested. You don't have to have done anything. But we end up working a lot with dreams, because dreams are the same thing, really, in my opinion. If you wake up and you had this like really interesting dream, might have been scary or whatever, and then you just kind of say, oh, well, I don't know what that was, and you go about your day, you just missed like an incredible opportunity to go into a message that your soul is trying to give you. Just like, an ayahuasca journey where you're crawling through the depths of hell, and then you get to the other side and you kind of wake up and tell someone about it, and then you have integration where you're learning what that was all about. Dreams are like the same thing. Like they're opportunity for people who don't want to do psychedelics, or it's not calling them. I always say, tell me your dreams, because those are all your messages from your soul.
Yeah,
So what
go ahead.
what do you do? Like, what sort of practices do you do around dreams? So you wake up in the middle of the night, you remember whatever you remember of the dream, you have a journal process. Like
Yeah, you would. They would write it down, and then come in and start talking about it, share it, and then just by like leading questions, like revelations happen that are just like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. And I'm not putting the seed in them. I'm more like asking, well, what do you think those dirty shoes meant, or whatever. And then they'll tell me a story from they're actually, have you heard of the book Belonging by Tokopa Turner? I highly recommend it. But she told the story of, this isn't a dream, but it just came to me and it's interesting, so I'll share it. She had really bad pain in her feet, and it lasted like 8 months where she could hardly walk and nobody could figure out what it was. X-rays didn't show anything. And she had some ancestors that were, I think, involved in the Holocaust. And she went and visited somebody who had like some information about some of her ancestors. And then there was a photograph of her great aunt's feet during this time, and her feet were like a mess. They were bloodied and bruised because they couldn't even wear shoes doing the things that they had to do. And she said in that moment, and she had had a dream about shoes or something, and in that moment she knew exactly why she had the pain in her feet, because it had carried through the ancestral line. And she said within like a week of visiting this relative that shared this with her pain in her feet was gone. And like those are things that can be revealed in dreams, the ancestral things that we're carrying.
Yeah, it's so interesting you bring this up. Like for the last 3 weeks, I've even got messages on my phone. I wake up and I'm sending messages to my close friends. And that's about 3 weeks ago, I had a dream where I was almost to the point where I was gonna wake up. It might be like 4 o'clock in the morning or something, but I was kind of like awake and then I was asleep. Then I was awake and then I was asleep. And then I couldn't tell when I was awake and when I was asleep. And all of a sudden I heard this just like this voice that really gave me like deep amount of wisdom as I'm going in and out of sleep, in and out of sleep, right? And it was so powerful. It gave me a lot of like insight and like light into my life. And then I set this message to my friends. I was like, oh, you're not gonna believe this. It's like, you know, there's this point, like before you totally get out of bed, before you come to full consciousness, if you try to go back in and you kind of let it go back in and out, because usually you're like, oh no, get up out of the morning, get out of bed, do this, do that, you know, like be active or do your meditation or start your yoga. But what I really realized is this kind of wake sleep toggling, you just toggle in and out of it, you know, you breathe like Soham or something into it, then all of a sudden, it's almost like there's entities. It's almost like entities that are guiding you that are not your own thought, right? And so this was about 3 weeks ago. So then 2 more times, it doesn't happen every morning, but it happened 2 more times in the last 10 days. It happened again where it's like you're kind of like in it. So I definitely think that there's like some kriya. And you know, Dr. Ladd, when you're around a yogi for a good portion of your life, you realize that they're dropping gold nuggets on you all the time, but you don't quite get it. But Dr. Ladd used to say, he says, whenever I can't sleep and I wake up way earlier than I'm supposed to get up, I just put my little blanket up to my neck and I do Soham, right? And I'm realizing that kind of, call it lucid dreaming or whatever, that in-between state is like absolutely like a psychedelic state. It's like exactly, you know, like, but you're doing it just by toggling in and out of sleep, just lingering, relaxing, breathing, and you kind of doze off a little bit and you're coming back. So it's so interesting. I've never even experienced this in my life, but you brought it up.
That's
like
funny.
the last 3 weeks, I've been like all up in this waking up. I'm like so excited. Oh, what's gonna happen? You know, like it's cool.
Yeah, it's there's so many ways to get messages from our deeper self, you know, and dreams. I feel like, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people that pay attention to their dreams, but because this, you know, psychedelic world has become such a popular thing, it's like, let's not forget about dreams too, because they're, you know, sometimes they have nothing to do with, I had a dream many years ago. I was working for this company. That wasn't a dream. I was working for this company and then I had a dream and didn't know the people too well. And I had a dream about one of the guys in my company, and his sister came to me in the dream and she was telling me she wanted to commit suicide. And I remember waking up and going, whoa, like this kind of feels like something I should go tell him, but I don't even know him that well. And so I thought about it for a while and I went in to work the next day and he walked by me and I said, hey, I got to tell you something. He's like, what? And I said, it's going to sound crazy. And I didn't even know if he had a sister. I didn't even know his last name. And turned out he had a sister and she was in a psych ward at the time. And I said, well, she has a message. And I shared it with him and he like, you know, I mean, that's what a dream can do too. You know, you can kind of like tap in, like these telepathy tapes, it's all sort of this connected space, you know, where when that valve opens up a little more from our 5 senses of being a human, we're in a much more collective space.
You know, the way I put words to some of the, you know, everyone's going to put words to subtle body experiences in their own words. It's going to be different for each person. But I feel, you know, when someone's in a deep yogic state or they're doing holotropic breathing or psychedelics, a lot of times, you know, I'm not sure what all the neurology is, but are you envisioning something from this body, or from a yogic perspective, is your subtle body just popping out? Like, are you getting detached from this particular space? And so from my background, the vocabulary for me is that your subtle body's just releasing from the confines of this body. So you can travel, you can see things, you can interact with other people's like subtle bodies, right? And that just seems to make a lot more sense, because too many times people on psychedelics, or they're seeing things that are real that are away from their body, you know, like like remote viewing or, you know, all kinds of interesting things. So I just think the way that I frame it is that it feels like your subtle body is just like releasing. Same thing happens in sleeping, I think. When you're not fully embodied embodied consciousness. There's like this in-between consciousness where you kind of float,
Yeah.
you know, out of your body. I don't know.
And I think you become more practiced at moving between the states and realms.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, dreams, psychedelics, practice, you can kind of just start to move more freely between the realms and those
Yeah,
those
and
other.
like connect with other people in those realms.
Yeah.
That actually happened in a ayahuasca journey with me. The group that we were with, I knew the guy next to me was really struggling, and you can edit this out, but he was going, fuck. And I heard him saying, he was actually saying that. And so in my mind, I was telling him, like, you got this, you know, whatever it is, you got it, you got it. And then I probably went off into my own thing. And then the next morning when everybody was talking, he like came up and gave me a big hug, and I go, what's that for? And he goes, you really helped me. And I said, what did I do? And he totally heard me talking, even though I wasn't talking. And that's why when we were talking about the telepathy tapes earlier, it's like so not a stretch to know that they meet in this place, because we're not confined to those five senses, like you were saying, you know. I think in actual death, there's a severing of a cord, but in dreams and in psychedelic journeys and people like Edgar Casey who could just do that, they're still connected, you know, but they're going out into that collective space.
So you listened to our telepathy tapes conversation.
I did.
What sense do you make of the ability of those children?
Well, I think because they are not in their five senses, really, that reducing valve, is it Alan Watts that talked about the reducing valve, or Terence McKenna? When we're born into this body, we have to reduce our awareness of where we came from in order to live as a human being, right? So we have eyes to see, ears, touch, taste. We live through our senses. And I think that those children came with not the ability so much to manage their senses, but their valve is still wide open to other ways of communicating. And so what looks like, you know, a terrible way to live from most people's perspective, because they look like they're very unhappy and they're not functioning as what we call a regular human being. It's such a beautiful thing, I think, to find out that that's where they're going, you know, and they have access to information that most of us could just dream of, you know. And I don't know, did that answer your question?
Sort of, yeah. The reduction valve was not installed in the same way.
Yeah, not exactly. And I have some clients like that too, where they're aware of a lot that's going on out there, like in geometric form and, you know, things like that. And it's harder for them to be grounded in their body. But do you want to take that away from them? You know, again, Ayurveda kind of comes into that, because if you're not grounded in your body, let's help you get grounded in your body, but we don't want to take away this beautiful gift you have of being able to like see things that a lot of people can't see.
Mm-hmm. Will you, I want to talk about your book and your painting a little bit. I feel like your painting, we can put some of the images up for people that are watching and not just listening, but they're so incredible and evocative, and yeah, I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more about your journey through it. I know you described some of it in here, but you didn't just start painting out of the blue.
No, so I used to take a studio art class when I lived in Connecticut once a week, and I would say I didn't really have an imagination, so we did still lifes. Like if he put that, my teacher put that in front of me, or a stack of books, or sometimes we went out on location and painted a pond. I had to see something to paint it. So So that's all I ever did, still life. And when people started saying, you know, you're interested in abstract, I'd be like, I have no idea what I'd paint if it was abstract. And then 5 years ago, my son passed away. And that was, you know, a huge turning point in my life when that happened. And I don't know, I must have connected to something, a guide or something, because I have never been so propelled to paint, ever. And like within a couple of weeks, I was at the art store buying canvases like this big and shoving them in my car. I was like what do you call it, like obsessed. I mean, there's a better word for it, but I was shoving stuff in my car and paints and brushes, and I turned one of our rooms into an art studio, and I painted like all day for 4 years straight, except when I was working. And when I got home from work, I was painting and painting. And this abstract stuff was coming out of me. Like, I would step back and it all just had to kind of make sense, you know? Like, I'd do once where I had no pre-planned anything. I just started like with a shape and then another shape and then that shape, and it had to kind of come together. And then when the whole thing was finished and I looked at it, I'm like, who did that? Like, it felt like, who did that kind of thing. But it was my somatic way of working through the pain, you know? And I call it the alchemy of grief because it felt like it helped me alchemize the grief into something where I could see beauty, you know? And so, yeah, that was my journey for 4 years. And it became a book because I started backing up from it a little bit and saying, wow, I have like a garage full of paintings. Just, I was showing them a little bit. I sold a few, but I wasn't pursuing that because I have what I do for my work. And I said, let me just start making sense of this. So it was kind of for myself to kind of look at how they started, where they evolved from there, and then where they went after that. And then as I was doing that, I thought, well, this might help somebody else who's in the middle of a terrible grief. And that's how I ended up. I'm not an author, I'm not a writer, but somehow I put it together.
I wish more people had the ability to tap into a creative space during that time of just overwhelming grief and shock. I made a film about this guy who's a friend of mine that I grew up with, who is a music therapist who would go into end-of-life situations with families. He worked in a hospital setting as a music therapist.
Oh.
And he would record the heartbeat of patients that were in their last weeks.
And then put music to it?
Yeah,
wow.
with them sometimes. He would write songs with people or create like little videos for people to play at their funeral with their heartbeat involved in it, or their families later. It was incredible work, but I would be with him in those hospital rooms. The film is on Ayurveda Plus. It's called The Beat of the Heart.
Oh, wow. I'll have to watch it if I can.
Watching the way and feeling the way, there's one scene in the film in particular where the guy basically gets a death sentence, and we were in the room filming. They were doing some kind of treatment and he was told that it wasn't working. The guy asks, what other options are there? And the doctor essentially tells him there are none. And we were filming because they were in the middle of working on this piece that they were creating together. And you see the guy kind of like take a breath, he takes it in, and then he turns to Brian and he says, all right, let's keep going.
Wow.
And in that moment, they just he was able to channel his energy into this project that they were creating together.
That probably helped
and
him
it
a
transformed the whole situation.
Yeah.
But the level of what you've done here is, I mean, these are beautiful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It changed I think without that, I honestly don't know where I'd be. And I don't think you have to be a good artist to do this at all. And I think the reason why I was led to get the huge paintings was because I was standing up, squatting. It wasn't like a little for me. I needed the whole body in
Yeah,
it.
you use the word somatic. I feel
Yeah.
like when you're on a big canvas like that, it's like a dance. It's a physical
Yeah,
experience.
I was moving around a lot. I'd be squatting, and then like my feet were numb, tingling, because I wasn't paying attention to myself much at all during that. I was just moving it out. And then there's some parts where I go on some retreats myself to connect, and then the paintings would change when I got home from those retreats. So yeah, I still paint. I have watercolors here at the Panchakarma, but not with any of the intensity that I did for 4 years. So, yeah, it was crazy.
How's your Panchakarma going? I just need to know.
It's great.
That's
I
good.
have a little raspy voice from it, but
You're feeling good?
I'm
Yeah.
feeling good. Yeah,
That's good.
I just love it. It's going to be my gift to myself every year to come here. I was here last year, the year before. I just did a 4-day thing because you guys had just opened, but
Yeah.
you're doing a great thing up there.
It's a good gift.
Yeah, it's a great gift, and yeah, it's hope more and more people can do it. At least your home one too.
Yeah.
And you're also doing all this work with Ibogaine and
Yeah, so I've been working at, or not participating, but working at a retreat called Root and Wisdom in Costa Rica. That's Iboga. So Ibogaine is generally done in a clinical setting. They have to be really well vetted. The clinics down in Mexico, there's like 3 really well vetted ones. And that's an alkaloid that's pulled out of the root bark of the Iboga plant. And it's medically monitored, and your dose is very precise, and it's not a ceremonial type of experience. Whereas Iboga, it's very much a ceremonial kind of experience, and it is probably the most beautiful ceremony that I've ever been in, and I have been in a lot of different ones. The one that is run by this couple, they're just so authentic in the study that they've done in Gabon, was where it's from, the Bwiti tribe in Gabon. And
Africa.
yeah, that's where Iboga is from. And so it's the whole thing. So you get this powder, go around the circle, you're outside around a bonfire, that's like mandatory, I mean, unless it's pouring rain. And you go through this whole little initiation thing, each person, and then you go up to him with this like smoke stick, and he's dancing around you, and it all feels so incredible. Like, it's a really beautiful, beautiful experience. And then you go, one that starts kind of kicking in, you go lay down, and then you have this incredible inner journey. And it's funny because it seems like Iboga has gotten this rap of being a really hard psychedelic, but it's actually not. And all you have to do is open your eyes and you're like back. But it gives you a really amazing opportunity to like witness your life in like almost like a near-death experience in a way, and see roads you took where you could have taken a different road, and kind of have a moment where you can correct an experience, because everything is quantum. So like you can change something, the result of something that like it actually happened in this real life, but I'm changing it in my quantum field, because now when I come up and out of it, that whole cellular thing is not in me anymore. So there's a lot of that kind of journey going on. And then the neurodegenerative ability is unbelievable. Troy is the name of the guy who runs this retreat, and he's working the month of September with a Parkinson's client who's coming down for 3 weeks by himself, because they don't really start the group retreats until November. So he can get more data. And I know a lot of the Ibogaine clinics are also working with Parkinson's patients, but it's helping to release this GDNF. And if you ask me what that stands for, I definitely won't remember, but it helps with that. It helps with, I mean, people have come in like with a walker and then they leave without it. So I don't want to make it sound like it's this miracle thing, but it kind of is in so many ways. You know, with addiction, if you can either do the Ibogaine way, which is much more urgent. You know, if somebody is coming in and they're still in active addiction, they'll go to the Ibogaine clinic. If you had the ability to stay off for like 2 weeks, you can go to Iboga. So an Iboga retreat won't deal with active addiction. But so a few of my clients came with me on the last one that I did, so I get to see the afterwards, and none of them were in any kind of active addiction, but they're so not interested in a glass of wine, coffee, anything that has an addictive thing that's just gone. And yeah, there's an amazing window of neuroplasticity afterwards, which is, they're not the only psychedelic that is like that, but, and then they often supply you with some microdosing afterwards to kind of keep it going for a while, but it's not the kind of thing you'll have to do forever. It's like you give your brain that window and then you put in some new practices, you know, disciplines, whatever. People don't like the word discipline, but I always sort of reframe that, because discipline is the disciple, and the disciple means you're following something that you love, you know? So when we reframe it that way, they're like, okay, I'll do, what is this discipline I need to do? But when that starts to happen, oh, there's the lizard. When that starts to happen, you don't need anything anymore. It's like, you know, for me, Panchakarma is like a once-a-year reset. But I think with psychedelics, some people will go back like a year later if they're starting to feel some kind of addictive tendencies come back and want to do it. But I think once you sort of develop new neural pathways, you don't really need to keep going back. There's a lot of people who said, oh yeah, I've done 100 ayahuasca ceremonies. I'm like, why? You know, I don't know. But yeah, so Iboga is a really an incredible gift to our planet.
I think it's gonna turn the world upside down, really, the Iboga.
Yeah.
It's the glial cells, you know, the growth factor is generally,
Yes.
people have said that your brain,
That's what
portions
the
of your,
GDNF thing is.
yeah, it's a glial neuro growth factor or
Yeah.
something like that. But when it actually, people have said that when portions of your brain degenerate, there is no regeneration, you know? And so this is turning it all upside down. So I think, you know, and Texas just passed the $50 million grant or fund, right, for the IBA research?
Yeah, for Ibogaine research.
Ibogaine research.
Because they can make that in the lab. They need to make it exact. It's for the research, and then I think Colorado just added 10 million onto that.
Right, right. So I mean, it's kind of like that type of movement in like a 24-month period is just like incredible, right? And so I don't know, my hunch tells me that there's some serious power in some of these like psychedelic stacking and psychedelic, you know, regeneration of the brain. And I think a lot of solutions for dementia, Alzheimer's, you know, Parkinson's, you know, is all going to come out. So I think it's so exciting. My dad has, you know, Parkinson's, and he's using Ayurveda to really slow it down, and he's done an incredible job. Like every morning he's doing all this like yoga, and he's doing all this like stuff.
Your dad has barely changed in, it's been like 7 years or something like that?
He's had it for over 8 years. And,
wow.
And, you know, but he's diligent in what he does. And so I'm actually, I want to find a place where I can take him so he can actually experience this, you know. And, but more importantly, you know, I think just talking about my dad a little bit, he watches our podcast, so he'll like this part. But, you know, you love your parents and you love your loved ones so much. And then he's always been, you know, studying yoga and reading Gita and doing this his whole life. But there's something about that psychedelic experience that frees you from like the fear of death and shows you your subtle realities are more real than these physical realities and all this. So I really have a wish for my dad to kind of, you know, if he wants to like experience this. But now with this Ibogaine, kind of, or Iba, however he's going to experience it,
Yeah.
maybe he can kind of feel all the dimensions of an alternate reality and also get the regeneration of his brain. So I just think it's just so exciting. I'm very excited about it because being an Ayurvedic practitioner, we're always looking for things that, there's medicine all around us, and then psychedelics have a very transformative vibe. They call it like sukshma guna, like in Ayurveda, which means it just permeates the subtle,
Yeah.
And so to stack these medicines with modern medicines or with modern herbs, not modern herbs, but with herbs.
This is pretty ancient, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing modern about it, but I think it's a very exciting time.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you have a foundation, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I just started it because, as I was telling one of you earlier, I was always getting frustrated because it's expensive. An Iboga retreat is expensive, and
What is
Ibogaine
expensive,
is even
like
more.
roughly?
Well, an Ibogaine experience, to go down to a clinic, have it monitored by a doctor, is like $10,000. And the retreat that I work at, I think it's like $5,500. Then you have your travel, and so some people in this group I run could do it, and they came with me on the last one I did, and other people wanted to do it, and I felt terrible that they couldn't come. And I know, I get calls all the time because I'm listed as a psychedelic integration therapist, and I can tell by the conversations that this would be so helpful if someone is, struggling with alcoholism or opiate addiction, and some of them are almost living on the streets, and you can't give them this treatment. So I got very frustrated, and I know frustration is a message from an emotion that says, you need to do something. That's what frustration is all about. And so it's brand new. It's called the Solace Foundation, and I just got everything, the 501c3, and we're doing a fundraiser in November. I'm actually going to put some of my paintings in the fundraiser, and I figured that was a good place to share them. And I wanted, my goal, my dream, is to be able to send 2 people a month. That's a real dream because that's a lot of money. But I'd be happy with 3 times a year as I start out to be able to sponsor somebody. So on the website, there's a form you can fill out, why you want it, why you need it. And then there's also if you want to partner or whatever. So
I know I've worked a lot with ayahuasca, and I've worked a lot with psilocybin, and people I know who've worked with Iboga, it sort of scared me off of it.
yeah, and that's a shame. I'd love for you to meet Troy Valencia. Troy Valencia is the one who runs this, and his wife, Jo Trinidad. He will completely change your perspective on it. I mean, I really didn't know what to expect when I went to work there. They asked me if I would come be the therapist that week, and boy, they just created the most feminine, even safe, I don't like the word container, but environment for everybody there. And all the people that were oh, this is the hardest thing. And by the time there was 2 ceremonies during the week, by the time the first ceremony came, I don't think anybody had the same apprehension. He said that it's not a grandfather, people say ayahuasca is the mother and Iboga is the grandfather, the stern grandfather. He said that's kind of because one shaman or whatever they're called from Africa came to the United States or Mexico, and he was a real hard personality, and he was working with people in addiction, and that's what he brought, was that, it's just the difference between 5 different yoga teachers. Some of them are one way and some of them are another way. And so it got this reputation as being this really stern, hard thing. And he said it actually, and what I experienced there was it had a very gentle energy. And he shared the story of supposedly how it got discovered was a man in the Bwiti tribe brought home a porcupine for his wife to cook. And so she's pulling out the porcupine stuff and she boils it and then they eat it. And he went out to hunt because when you take smaller doses, it's kind of like a stimulant and your senses get enhanced. So they use it for hunting, and you can go out into the forest and hear sounds from far away. And I experienced that where I could hear people whispering from like 2 rooms over. Your senses become really enhanced. And they were like, what's going on? How did this happen? And they tracked it down to, he goes, it must have been the porcupine. But everyone else is eating porcupines. How come that's not happening to them? So they go back to where he found the porcupine, and they saw this shrub that the porcupine had been eating, and it was all eaten, chewed away, and that's how they discovered Iboga. That's the
legend.
Legend. Yeah, but it was a woman that discovered it, and he really wanted to emphasize that this is, a real woman-held kind of plant. And if there's people listening to this, they might completely disagree with me, but that's what I experienced when I was there. And so I do think so much depends on where you go.
Yeah, I feel like that's the same with ayahuasca. The traditions of who you're working with, they're going to completely change the experience.
Exactly.
I feel like a lot of people overdose people, and they have these intense purging and overwhelming experiences, and then you work with somebody else who works with a lower dose and is able to help with integration more, and it's a very different experience.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. If a shaman teaches you to work with the medicine, as opposed to keep jamming more medicine down your system, because that's just going to cause like imbalance, right? And I think that's like mission critical.
Yeah. So if you want to come down, I'm working there in December.
What part of the world is it? In Costa Rica,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really incredible group that runs it.
And is he mainly working with, like you're talking about a lot about addiction, but is it?
Oh no,
it's
anything.
just kind of self-development and.
It can be that. It can be, like I said, Parkinson's, but it can be. I mean, I originally didn't go for anything except I'm curious, and I also don't like to help people integrate something that I haven't experienced. So.
It's in Costa Rica. Is that where it is? All right, group trip. Ask for a Groupon. Me, Jeremy, and my dad will roll down there in December.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because, I've heard that people call ayahuasca the mother, and then San Pedro, they call it the father. But San Pedro is like so soft and gentle.
That I've never heard it called the father.
Oh, really? I had, the person that, that I know that does ceremonies was talking to me about that. But it's just kind of interesting that people are calling something masculine, but it seems like if they're calling that masculine, it seems softer.
Yeah.
My dad's definitely softer than my mom for sure, so I don't know.
You can certainly meet people who have had a very intense experience on Ibogaine and Iboga, very intense. Like when Troy went to the Bwiti tribe to get initiated, it was really intense, but that was because he was going through the initiation. Like, if you come down to the retreat, he'll share the story because he does share it with everybody, but it was really, really intense. I think the best way to start taking these kind of things is gently, So, and he also can tell, like, this person, like someone like me, I can take this much ayahuasca and have blast off experience, whereas someone else is going up for the second cup. They come around, they're like, you want another cup? I'm like, no.
Mitesh, you just have to open the bottle across the room and he's...
Doesn't take much. I want to dance with God anyway, so I can take a little waft of it from across the room.
Yeah.
But my wife, on the other hand, she can guzzle it left and right, nothing out.
She like this.
She's like, I think I think I meditate too much. I was like, girl, just calm down. So, what might be a good question for you also is that, so if you look at the experience of ayahuasca, then ibogaine, psilocybin, because, how do you categorize, like, can you even categorize, I know it's unique for each person, but the textures and differences between the experiences amongst those, would you have insight on that?
Well, we didn't talk about bufo. That's
Bufo,
probably...
just throw that all in there. All DMT stuff, just throw it in there.
That one to me was, I would say that's my medicine because it's so intense and beautiful and powerful. And that's half an hour. You know, I mean, not everybody has that same experience, but I think I wrote about it in my book. But when I came back, my paintings were like trying to kind of recreate this like glory. So that's in its own category. I think, so ayahuasca is like a vine, right? And so it kind of takes you out into a journey that's not really grounded in earth. Iboga is a root plant, and it definitely keeps you rooted. So some of the fears that were being expressed at this bonfire thing was, you know, what if I drift off? And he was telling them, this is a root. This keeps you rooted into the earth. And all you literally have to do is open your eyes and you're here.
What I kept hearing about was near-death experiences, and when I think about a root, it's underground, and that there's something about like
Taking you down into the underground. But that happens on ayahuasca. I mean,
anything could take you down at a certain dose where you just...
Yeah, I think what he means by rooted is you're here on Earth, and you're on this planet, and you're kind of doing this work of your human self that needs to be done. You don't see entities. You're not, you know, in alien world.
With our lizard friend.
I've never been in alien world, actually. That's never really happened to me. I mean, you know, mushrooms, you both have worked a lot with mushrooms. That, for me, that's a real nature experience. Like, this starts moving, and trees are breathing, and rocks are calling me, you know.
Yeah.
I think some people have a lot of fear can come out when you begin going into a journey. If you have a lot of fear, this is the best thing to help you face it, you know. Well, not the best thing, but one of the things that helps you face it. And if you have a good guide that helps you lean into it and tells you you're going to be okay, you know, this is something that's controlling your life in your waking life. And it's showing you this in such a dramatic way that we're going to help you, you know, go into it. And the only way to get to the other side of it is to go lean right into it. And so, yeah, fears come up a lot. I don't know if I'm answering your question. You asked me like the differences between them.
Yeah, you are actually. It just, you know, it's just interesting to get, you know, your take on like the experiential differences if something can be delineated. But yeah, you are.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they really can be delineated. I think people have had a similar mushroom experience as an ayahuasca experience, you know, if that's what you need to see.
Right.
And there's so many variables for where you are in that moment when you walk in, like, and the room and the environment and the people that you're with.
What you need and what entities are floating around, and like, that's all.
Yeah.
The integration aspect is, to me, one of the most interesting ones, because it's very easy to go and see some colors and lights and like have a far out experience, which was sort of a lot of my earlier times in high school, just being an idiot with my friends. But then doing it in a more held environment and consciously using it as a vehicle for insight and expansion. And then you mentioned that you hold these group sessions that involve integration, and I'm curious what sort of practices you encourage. And
it's so important to like talk about it. There's no, I mean, I don't have any particular technique. It's more like people are sharing and talking about it, and then I might, you know, have some insight, but other group members might have some insight, or I could tell someone's giving insight, but it's not landing with the person. That's okay too, you know, to be able to say, yeah, that's not really resonant. You know, finding who you are in this group environment of like somebody kind of saying, well, I think that was, you know, your grandmother was this or that, and they're like, that's not resonating. So it's, you know, just talking about it and like putting in some practices. Like one of my clients had an experience, a mushroom experience with her a Russian grandmother. It wasn't her grandmother, but it was like that sort of symbolic grandmother. And she was telling her, and they were having tea, and she was in the journey.
In the astral.
And she was telling her, you need to laugh more, you need to have fun. You're so serious and you need to have fun. And so when she was sharing, that wasn't in the group, that was one-on-one, she's sharing that, she said, I want to make sure I don't forget that. And so this is just a little thing, but like, use the teacup that you were using, because she had it with her. Every morning, have that teacup with a little message saying, laugh and something like that. And, well, none of us ever keep things forever, but even to integrate something into your regular practice for like 6 months, and then it's kind of in your body and you don't really have to do it all the time. So little things like that help you kind of carry that thread. But I do think, talking in a group or talking one-on-one with a therapist, it's like, if you don't say it out loud, all you're doing is holding it inside your head and only hearing it from, we need a mirror, we need a mirror of somebody else that like either shows some truth to us or shows us that it's not true, but I think so much of it is just talking and sharing. One of my favorite sayings that somebody told me was a grief shared is a grief halved, and a joy shared is a joy doubled. And I think integration is so similar, because when you share something, it becomes a bigger part of your life than when you just keep it to yourself. And if you can't integrate or you don't have anybody, at least, journaling, because then you're kind of taking it from here and putting it down on the paper.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's like if there's a group of people that you know well, and that you kind of have similar value sets, and if you journey together, it's like, first of all, the journey, you feel like you're kind of creating, there's like a in sacred geometry in the East, they have, the concept of a yantra.
Yeah.
So like when you're all journeying together, you're creating this like sacred geometry.
Yeah.
And then there is helping of each other's souls and like healing. And it's just such a beautiful kind of merging, with no ego that happens, right? But then I also think that post, for the days or weeks, or depending on, like, if you're close to the people you journey with, the conversations are just the best, because people's like, there's like some universal truth that they're talking about, and it's so palpable, even if it was in that person's experience and not yours. But it's kind of, it really is the interconnectedness of it all. I think is just so special. And the sharing of it for weeks or months or years to come afterwards, I think is just very special.
Yeah.
So maybe integration sometimes happens in your own community, especially if multiple people are journeying together. It seems really special.
Yeah, I think we hear the word integration and we think it has to be some very specific thing. It's like creativity. People will say, well, I'm not creative at all. And I'm like, well, do you set the table in a beautiful way? Because that's your way of having some creativity in your life. Do you make a meal that is beautiful? Because my mother will be the first one to say, I can't draw a stick figure. I'm like, I have no creative bone in my body. And then I remind her like how she used to set the table at Christmas. And so you hear the word creativity and you think, oh, an artist, a singer, or whatever. And you hear the word integration and you think, oh, I have to be in this very specific.
Yeah, there's judgment that can.
Yeah, and it's more like about talking it through with somebody, but ideally with somebody who you feel has some wisdom, because if you talk it through with like somebody who doesn't necessarily, and then they're kind of giving you feedback, and you can end up going down a funky path.
The shaman that we both sit with, one of the things I really connect with him about in the work that he does, he's interesting. He's from Chile and trained for decades with a master shaman in Peru, but he also has spent decades studying yoga and going to India.
Uh-huh.
And he talks about it as if your whole life, if your kind of focus and goal is on deepening your connection to God and becoming a vehicle and a vessel for the divine and for spirit, and you have practices and ways that you deepen that connection and stay rooted in that connection, ayahuasca is, in the way he uses it, one of the tools
Yeah.
on that path. So it's a very natural integration. It's not like an aberration of your life where you have this experience, but because you're on this life path and your intention is such, it's a tool within that journey, which is I think one of the reasons I really connect with him, because it's not this isolated thing that happens.
Thing.
It's a way to deepen your practices that you're doing on a daily basis to establish and deepen and expand that connection.
Bringing it right into your lifestyle.
And
like
getting more
Ayurveda.
insights and gifts for your practice to help continue to evolve.
Yeah, I think it gives you that space between the seen and the unseen, you know? And so as you're sort of going on the hero's journey, or whatever you want to call it, it gives you the opportunity to like experience something of the unseen so that you can now bring it. Because until you actually experience something, someone could tell you, oh yeah, there's a whole collective, you know, consciousness out there and God this, but I didn't experience it, you know, and the minute you have an experience, it's like that Good Friday experiment. Did you hear about that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, that was many, many years ago with when it was Richard Alpert, before he became Ram Dass.
Oh, yeah.
The Good Friday experiment.
Yeah, why don't we share it? Yeah.
Well, they did LSD. Was it LSD?
It was
or
LSD,
mushroom?
yeah.
In a church on Good Friday. And they were all volunteers. They were professors. And only one person, I think, ran out of the church. But everybody else had this incredibly profound, moving experience of it. Most of them were experiencing God or spirit or cosmos. And that one experience, Houston Smith was one of them too. We had a chance to interview him many years ago. Most of them didn't continue using any kind of psychedelic. That experience stayed with them for the rest of their life. They followed up with them like a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later. It's like someone who has a near-death experience completely changes them. Why did I bring that up? I forget.
Just like practices when you're on a path of...
Yeah, and seeing that between the seen and the unseen, you have that experience and you bring it into your life in, you know, however ways makes the most sense. And then it's like carries you forward.
And it helps you in your day-to-day. I think it helps you in your day-to-day yogic practice or meditation. Is like, you know, one thing, again, Dr. Ladd for years kept talking about this concept of the knack. He was like, well, you do this kriya, you do this breath work or whatever, and you find yourself in some type of state. You're like, wow, that was very peaceful. That was calm, that was whatever. But then you kind of come back to this regular consciousness of your mind doing whatever it does. And then you do another kriya and you'll kind of go into that space, right? And he always says, it's not the kriya that's important, it was the knack of going into that space, right? And I think that, you know, from a psychedelic perspective, is a very tangible experience of the subtle, right? And then when you're meditating months later, years later, you can still pull, you can go through that door, or they call it breadcrumbing. You're breadcrumbing your way back to an experience that you had that was, you know, very much in the subtle.
Yeah.
So I think it's, everyone's gonna have their own path. Some people have no inclination to it, and you know, some people can use breath work to get into very kind of elevated states, but
and dreams.
And
sometimes
dreams.
People
so
have
like everyone
dreams
has their
are-
own path, but I feel very lucky to have, you know, had exposure to it for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it's a way to, I like this concept of inner winds, that we have these pipes in us that can get really clogged and gunky. And through practice, it's like these inner winds can
Cleaning them,
flow deeper, and you have greater pranic integration and flow that can help you connect to spirit. And I feel like ayahuasca or any of these heightened kind of experiences, you can really do some real deep cleaning.
Yeah, you just brought this beautiful visual. There's a sculpture in Helsinki, Finland, that's in the middle of some park, and it's all these pipes, like different size pipes, all clumped together. And when the wind blows, like the most beautiful music plays through it. And so the visual of your pipes and the beautiful music playing through when we're clear
Yeah.
is a goal.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking with us and reconnecting many years
Yeah,
later. This
you're
is a real treat
welcome.
and joy.
Thanks for having
And our
me.
prayers are with you, that may your foundation prosper
Thank
and
you.
grow, and may you send many people to be healed with Ibo. That's, a really beautiful vision you have.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.